talk about today?
We have to be honest that we started talking and then
Yes, sometimes this podcast, having a time of day once a week that you're going to like record something profound can be challenging.
Yeah, and sometimes I think that there's pressure to make it profound. At least I feel like, I don't want to waste people's time. I'm not Chris. I'm just saying, like, if people are listening, I want it to be valuable.
Right, and then there's the consideration of like not just talking about our personal life.
No.
I do think sometimes that is valuable for people to hear.
I agree.
Other people's struggles, trials, and tribulations. They certainly take away from that. There are some concepts that you have developed that I'm also not as familiar with. So today is one of those examples.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about this concept of, you've talked in the past about the student, the old guard,
and the hoarder. Yeah.
Those are relative to like kind of learning and how you kind of receive information and how your mindset is in terms of that. Today we're talking about three different characters.
Yeah.
More so as it relates to like how you deal with situations, challenges in your life.
Yeah. Kind of how you interact with a dynamic external environment or your life, which includes other people, work, like obviously like relationships.
So basically life. I mean, how you, let's just throw a bunch of things out there. If I want to like lose weight or get fitter, or how when I go to work every day, if I have...
Yeah, I mean, as I get into it, I don't know if like just general life is the case, but when there's something that you're kind of involved in that is like a little bit more dynamic and
like
responds
adversity?
to you. Yeah, adversity can be in there. It's just taking a complex environment and a dynamic environment and looking at how you interact with it on a human level, on a personal kind of playing field, if you will.
So maybe it helps to identify the three.
Yeah, so if we think about this being, there's three characters.
Okay.
There's the cynic, the cheerleader, and the coach. And I guess I'll just kind of briefly explain each of them. So the cynic is the person who never trusts anything, always thinks, or most of the time, thinks that people's motives are disingenuous, that they're probably out to sell something or elevate themselves over others. So again, this is part of the environment, the other people environment. And like, there's got to be some trick, some catch, something, right? A cynic who
questions things.
Yeah, and not just questions things, but like has a totally negative filter that they see others through. So that's just, kind of part of being cynical.
Okay, so like a really simple example, if I'm like, hey, do you want to, if I like ask you to do something and you're like, well, why are you doing that? Is that because like you want something later, or like you want to, you want your way, so now you're trying to
so if you were to say, hey, Bill, you should go skydiving this weekend, the cynic would be like, right, she wants me to go skydiving so that next weekend she can do this other thing that I kind of said.
Skydiving.
Yeah.
Yeah. Got it.
So like,
there's always this.
There's a highly manipulative.
Very exhausting.
The cynic is exhausting.
Yeah.
But the cynic refreshes him or herself by being more cynical. That's the sick thing too.
Well, and it sounds like there's also a lot of projection in there. It's hard for people. So like, if you were that person, if you were operating as a cynic, it would be like almost impossible for me to suggest anything or do anything, because like every time I do, I'm in a corner.
Yeah, exactly.
You're putting other people into like an impossible position.
You're putting other people into an impossible position, but what I think is it's also because you find yourself in an impossible position with yourself. Your back is against the wall. And so everything is a threat. The only thing you know is to fight because you feel like other people are oppressing you. So in return, you need to frame it in a way that
you have to flip the script.
Yeah. And so there's tons of judgment in there.
Yeah, so let's just do an overview of all of them and then get
that's the cynic. So, if you think about times of being cynical, right, and what that means. Then there's the cheerleader. And the cheerleader is
when you describe this, I picture like,
oh my god,
this isn't like fair, but like people who only put out GIFs, whatever they are.
Yeah, how do you pronounce that?
I don't know, but you know what I'm saying. Like everything's a little meme.
But some of those things are funny.
Okay, but you know what I mean. Like everything's a meme, and you're like, oh my god, like.
Yes.
Like it's just so surface.
Yeah. So the cheerleader is. So what do cheerleaders do? Cheerleaders just.
Yay.
Encourage you and say good job, and they cheer and they rant. But let's take football for example. If you're losing 49-0 at halftime, that's probably bad, right? Yeah, that's better. You're probably going to lose that game. In fact, you're definitely going to lose that game because the other team is just going to not mercy kill you, essentially. The cheerleaders, after halftime, are going to come out and continue to cheer. Yeah, they're still going to cheer and they're saying, come on, you can do it, rah, rah, this and that. And they have not looked at the scoreboard or they have not looked at the field and they have not seen the reality of the situation, which is just, hey, you're just unmatched. Now, you can still try, of course, that's great, but like the job of the cheerleader is just to kind of cheer. It's very surface. Yeah. It's not actually constructive. The cheerleader is in real life then, is somebody who keeps their head in the sand and just says it'll all work out, it'll be fine, it'll be okay. The wishful thinking, the silver lining, without having the constructive or the critical eye towards, hey, what's going on here? The cheerleader often refuses to look within and see like, okay, there's shit within me I need to address.
Okay.
And so then, but that's not happening. So what's made up for as like an overcompensation is just everything's gonna be okay.
Right.
And
so there's some denial or repression.
Denial, unwillingness to be realistic and to see, but just this kind of surface constant saying of positivity, and I don't need
bumper
to say
sticker like, stuff.
Yeah, a bit much, like slapstick advice. There's actually there's some YouTube celebrity, I guess, that's talking about how he has found the cure for anxiety now, and it's like it's just the same kind of slapstick, quick quips of advice. Like you create it, man. You just gotta relax. Yeah. It's like fuck off. Right. You know what I mean? Like anyway. What's unfortunate is that does sometimes cast the ability to be optimistic in a negative light if you overdo it and if you don't dose it with an appropriate level of
it's like the boy who
awareness.
cried wolf.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah.
Okay. So that's the cheerleader.
So they're sort of on opposing ends a little bit, the cynic and the cheerleader. One focuses only on what's wrong or the negative, and the other is just like overly positive and potentially completely unrealistic.
Right.
And then there's the coach. And the coach might actually seem like a bit boring when compared to the cynic and the cheerleader. But the coach is a role that I think we can all owe it to ourselves to play in our lives. And the coach fundamentally understands that whatever opponent there is, yes, the goal in whatever athletic endeavor is to beat the opponent or to score higher than others. And the coach's job is to facilitate how to best extract talent and performance and potential out of people. But the coach does not perform for the athletes. Like, the coach is limited to the sideline. The coach also understands that within every opponent, there is a incredible opportunity to learn. Even if you're down 49-0, or even if you're, winning. Like, you can find a way to learn from whatever these things that you engage with in, let's say, an adversarial type relationship. The coach fundamentally understands that practice and consistency are critical to whatever sort of progress there is, and that talent only goes so far. That it has to be the best, combine it with an incredible work ethic. Right. And there's an honesty about how you did, how you didn't do, what you do well, what you can improve. And so the coach kind of has the ability to zoom out a bit and look at the system as a whole. If it's a team sport, you might have one great person on the team, or you might have 10 average folks or whatever. But like, looking at, okay, what do we have here? What's the disposition, the makeup of this individual or of this organization or unit or team or whatever it look like?
Yeah, I mean, so obviously the coach, it's like, well, it's like a best case scenario. I mean, that's like amazing to be able to have all that perspective. But do you see these three things as, obviously somebody's not just always one or just always other? You feel like...
So I feel like these are, if you've never been the cynic, and you feel like I've never been the cynic before, potentially you're a cheerleader. If you're like, I've never been a cheerleader before, potentially you're the cynic. And if you're like, no, I'm always the coach, I'm not so sure about that. Because everybody, what I think is universal to these, and this is both personally as well as working with people, it's not the color of your skin. Like, it changes daily. It can change in different situations. It's not something that's a blanket application for everything where you're like, look, this is what you were genetically given, and that's what you've got. So in certain situations, it's going to, you can play different roles. And so what I see is, from an exhaustion standpoint and from a burnout standpoint, and frankly from just not improving like mental and emotional fitness standpoint, is these two characters it is exhausting to always find the negative or the hook or the agenda, and it is exhausting to always feel like you have to put on this smile and put on the good face and just all right, we're doing it, and it's like so where I think that the coach then is that sort of sage soul who can say, all right, I recognize now that I have a cynic on my team, or I recognize now that I have a cheerleader. How can I...
But you're saying within yourself, when you're talking with the coach.
Oh, yeah, of course, but within yourself, meaning on your team. So there's a part of that, what you're doing there, if you view yourself, quote, as your team, you're stepping away a little bit, you're detaching yourself a little bit, and you're sort of trying to get a position of being objective, as much as you can.
So when we first started recording the first time, something you said about this was, it's the value of this, so like the so what, there's some of the like naming. So just like you can name, the person you were, and like starting to look at like who you want to be, the Mike versus John stuff, this is like providing a name on this. So like right now I'm being the cynic. Yeah. So that it can, because the so what of this is like, okay, great. So I'm like always the cynic. Great, identified that. So what? Well, it's like now being able to identify that, catching yourself in a situation where you're like seeing that objectively, like I'm being a cynic. How can like the coach in me be a little bit like step up here and
I mean, I guess the first question would be like, do you want to play the role of the cynic? I would generally say that the cynic is, I would judge the cynic as being a drain on your energy, on people's interaction with you, desire to be around. Like the cynic.
Well, it's just negative.
The reason it's also not the critic, because you can be critical, but the reason it's not the critic is because the critic also provides good reviews sometimes, like food critics, right? The cynic, though, always finds what's wrong, and frankly, it's exhausting to be around.
But so when you talk about like the cynic being someone that's always defensive and their back against, like, because their back is, they put themselves in that position. Like, what does that look like? Because I mean, I think everybody understands like being cynical. But then like we had started talking about like judgment, like that the cynic is kind of judgmental. Like, how does that play into that?
Because the cynic refuses to see the good in someone's actions.
Because they're always looking for what's their agenda.
Yeah, what's their agenda? And often what I've seen is that the cynic, like I said, views everyone else as the problem, and everything else is bad, and that is just a projection of the shit going on in their life. Like I said, judgment is huge in the cynic. There's also that element of being, if you're the cynic to others, you're projecting what you are also doing to yourself.
Right.
So you're judging. Yeah. So you have this inability to really actually accept who you are. The cynic. Like there's very, very little acceptance with the cynic. And so for people that, and I've been the cynic, I mean, I'll be the first to admit I've definitely been the cynic, and it's not good. You know, it's exhausting. It's not fun to be around. It's, you know, just it takes its toll.
Well, sure. I mean, when someone's always, anything you try to throw out there, there's always a no. I mean, every answer is no. There's no possibility. There's no options.
Yeah, there's no
hope. It's just
right.
Nothing.
There's very little creativity. There's very little curiosity. There's this immediate, you know also that so-and-so's out to get you or trying to screw you over. There's no trust. Those are all very catabolic things that rot you away on the inside. If you're unable to see and accept the goodness in something, and just have it be goodness, that's like,
yeah. So what do you
exhausting.
feel like, so moving away from that, how does that happen? So you recognize you're that. It's not just as simple as like, oh shit, I'm being the cynic. Let me just fix that. So what was your experience of, because I feel like you've made huge progress in taking on more of the coach character.
Yeah.
But what did that take, do you think?
I always sort of, when I think about my experience, I pictured myself just like holstering my weapon, and that, not to sound too whatever guy, but like why I bring that is because it's like the awareness then of, holy crap, man, like in your hand now is your weapon and there's no threat. So put it away. Just the ability to disarm yourself.
Right.
Now, if you're in a scenario where you need to survive, or your guard is up or whatever, like, yeah, of course, like I'm not saying just go through life as if it's, like just, oh, this is all great, nothing's gonna happen to me.
Sure.
Like, that's not what I'm saying.
Not being ignorant.
Yeah, but recognizing, like, man, am I attacking other people? Or getting like fired up in a negative way about situations or environments that I really don't know and think I know.
Sure. So what though, like, that's fine, the awareness of that, but it was just practice then?
Yeah, I mean, it's taking a deep, hard look at yourself and saying, like, I'm being the cynic right now.
Right.
Do I want to be cynical? Do I enjoy what this feels like? Is it, how much I mean, how much energy am I spending
right.
being this way? And then it's like connecting to how do you feel when you are being cynical?
Right.
And look, if you want to continue and carry on, like, of course, it's no judgment. I don't, it's your life. But I can tell you, and especially people that then recognize that and disarm themselves, then we can work forward on the process of being like, you really have to let go.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a big thing. And letting go is not denying. It's recognizing, all right, I'm having these thoughts, feelings, actions, and I need to be aware of them and let them pass. Because denial of just trying to deny and ignore is only gonna that's for me, that's not an effective strategy. And so letting go is certainly a part of it. Now you can take a positive spin on that too and find things to be appreciative for. I think this is where gratitude is like the medicine of the cynic as well. But it has to be like, it has to be consistent, and it has to be something that you really kind of search for and connect with. And that's like a big thing. But yeah, I mean, identifying it first, letting go, like disarming, finding some gratitude, not liking in yourself how it feels, and then saying like, I will take the role. And then that's where you sort of switch to the coach's standpoint with yourself. And you understand that, okay, the coach's job, like in practice, you're going to make mistakes, you're going to learn. When you have a coaching relationship, be that life coach, business coach, sports coach, whatever it might be, that's where the fundamental understanding that part of the coach's job is to guide you through things that you're not that good at right now, because it's for something else. When you get beat, the best coaches always look at that as learning things. Hey, what did we do well here? Where did we underperform? What do we need to get better at? You know, if you are completely outclassed, then you have a model example of what a high class team looks like. And not to say you're going to copycat them, but like you can then pick one thing and be like, wow, that team moved with speed. Their communication was on point, whatever it might be. In applying that to the cynic.
So okay, so then the cheerleader, what do you see some of the flaws? Like, what would talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. So the cheerleader is somebody who is very, very good at rationalizing and hides behind the rationalization.
So is the cynic more on the emotional side or not necessarily?
Is the cynic more...
Well, if you're saying that like the cheerleader is really good about rationalizing, would you categorize, or is it not really?
I don't know.
No. Okay, so the cheerleaders going...
By rationalizing, I mean like making up excuses for why things are okay when perhaps they're not. Like,
just to keep it positive?
Yeah, just to keep it this pseudo positivity. And so the cheerleader, there's a lack of awareness and purposeful awareness to be like, okay, what's going on here? Like, seriously, what is going on here? Put the pom-poms down. Stop cheering. It's not forever, but like in this moment, you know, connect with yourself and say, like, what is going on? Because if there's signs that you have within yourself, then like whatever those are, those are gonna be different for everybody. But like, don't just kind of hammer through and push through.
So it's not necessarily being positive all the time. I mean, I think not being like cheering and like everything's gonna be great. It's not about like the positivity. It's more so not acknowledging
it's willful ignorance.
Yeah.
Is what it is. But it's also like, I need to stay positive. It's essentially the form of positivity over the essence of it.
Just keep going.
Just keep going. Everything's gonna be okay. We're just gonna do it. When it's like, but that might be further digging. That might be contributing to this issue, and not and getting further away from resolution. If you keep ignoring things, I'm just gonna ignore it. I'm just gonna ignore it. I'm just gonna ignore it. It's all good. It's all good. That's what I mean by like the rationalizing.
Right.
Like when you ask somebody like, "How's it going?" Hey man, it's going good. It's going good. It's like bullshit. If it's not going good, it's not going good. Now I understand that like to a stranger with a throwaway small talk, you might not launch into whatever you have going on, and it's not always to say that there's some bad thing going on. This isn't all about negativity, but like generally speaking, if in your dynamic environment that you're involved in, there's room for growth, there's something that you want to improve upon. That's kind of what we're saying. So, yeah. So for the cheerleader, like, check the scoreboard every now and then. Yeah. Look at how you're playing.
Right.
And the beautiful thing is like those are also going to have feelings associated with them, sensations. Like, there's going to be also that like. You know that moment before you have to put on the fake stuff. That like.
But would you say there's numbness associated with those people?
Sometimes,
it's just sort of
sure.
Like turning off because you can continue to like cheer and just pretend things aren't happening. The way you do that is just to numb things out.
Yeah, So coping comes into play with that. I mean, coping mechanisms come into play with both of them, and you know, the cynic is going to cope via attacking others. It's going to make them kind of feel something. The cheerleader, coping by way of numbing or, intentionally not looking at areas that they want to look at. You know, and so when you think about what a cheerleader does, is it's not quite it's not really constructive.
Yeah.
And so from a how to improve standpoint, I think or how to bring the coach online then with the cheerleader, it's like, look, I love your positivity, love your energy. That's something that more of us can benefit from, but let's also direct it towards like, how can we be constructive? What is this situation going on here? You know?
Yeah. It sounds like with the cynic, some of the stuff you've talked about, one of the not tactics, but tools that would help the cynic is like to be curious, just having the reaction, and then I mean, obviously off the top of my head, for me, like, I'm probably more in the cheerleader category, but I think about certain individuals or people in our lives, like you start to look at people through those lenses, and you can start to identify like where people.
You can start to see patterns, and I think that I would recommend, and I struggle with this too, and I think recently I've been doing a better job with this, just self-visualization in terms of I'm not judging, I'm just looking to recognize patterns. And when you do see like the pattern then of the cynic is for something that can be nice is like kind of what's wrong with it, or this other agenda that cannot be trusted, and you're really just robbing yourself of experiencing joy. On the cheerleader, like when people don't talk about things that need to be talked about, you know, and if we look at patterns for that, where if there's uncomfortable conversations,
well, everything just feels
that
like,
are avoided.
Sure. But everything for both of them is just like one note. Different notes, but the cynic and the cheerleader, everything's just like the same. And I would definitely, when you describe the cheerleader, that's why I said it's like not necessarily positive, because I think I've definitely been more in that category than the cynic. Because it's like, just keep going and kind of just choosing to not look at certain things, but continuing just the forward progress, and like I'm making progress. I think it's also that you're rationalizing like you are making progress, and it's like, but you're not really making progress. It's a false sense of progress because you're not necessarily looking at things. So I think it is interesting, like, yes, not getting too caught up in like it being about positivity necessarily, but just getting good at Yeah, not having the awareness, just marching on, head down, like here we go.
Yeah, and I think it's not all positivity, although what's, you know, right. So for the cheerleader, there's a gross lack of awareness.
Mm-hmm.
There's a denial of looking at perhaps the reality of the situation. You know, for example, if like you're falling behind on your bills,
mm-hmm.
those are things that you need to probably pay attention to,
right.
and have like a no shit conversation,
mm-hmm.
or look at things and action. And that's where the coach is going to come on. Hey, what can we do to, you know, get some expenses off our plate, or you know, whatever. So with the cheerleader, I think that what's important to remember is that is equally as exhausting, you know. And anybody that's just kind of like, you know, we used to say like hope is not a method.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of where that's.
Sure. Well, it's exhausting while you're doing it, but then what you're also doing is building up. You're sort of digging yourself a hole. I feel like the cheerleader, because there's a lot of repression, or not just ignoring, closing the
a lot of denial.
closets.
Yeah, a lot of denial.
And at some point, it's going to be exhausting when you can't do that anymore. Now you have to look at everything,
right?
Because it's accumulating.
Right.
You're just choosing not to acknowledge it.
So this is then where I think the coach then can step into and look at, just as you bring your own coach's mind online. A coach will light you up if you continue to make the wrong things, like if you're not learning. You know, so a coach will be critical of your performance and how you show up and all that kind of a thing. So it's not to say that the coach is going to be the cynic, but the coach is going to have that, like, honesty. Coach is also going to recognize and celebrate when you do something well. And the best coaches are going to, not the fact that you played really well, you had a great game, but that you worked hard to improve, to get to afford yourself the opportunity to then express it in that game. So there's been, and I'll just say, like, I've been on teams, I've had coaches where we'll win. We've won, you know, let's just say 4-0, which is like pretty much a blowout. And they're great. And it's like, oh, you guys did awesome. It's like, yeah, but we didn't though. We played like crap, kind of did this and that. So it's not just celebrating the outcome, obviously, but being like, look, it could be a loss. The coach can celebrate what went into that, what went into the work of the process.
Yeah, I think this is where, like, I understand the metaphor. But sometimes, like, bringing it back to, like, so in a real life scenario.
So what's important to you?
So let's just look at, okay.
Well, let's look at you.
Yeah, I was going to.
Oh, okay.
But I was trying to come up with, like, a specific, just saying, like, what's important to me. That's kind of, but, like.
What's something you're working on?
But so, okay, so we're talking about the context of the cheerleader. Like, there's a lot happening right now in our life. There's some things we don't know the outcome's going to be. There's things we're working on building. There's some moving pieces. There's some decisions that need to get made, that it's like there's a lot of things in both columns, both check plus and check minus, like, okay. So a default, being the cheerleader, would be like just kind of not looking at those things, choosing to sort of like just keep going.
Like what? If you want to talk about it, give me an example.
I don't really think I want to
Oh, because you were saying personally. Real life.
Yeah, I'm just saying, like, I'm just trying to still keep it relative, but not, like, be super
So what's something
personal.
in the past that you've generally you said you sort of default to a cheerleader.
Right, so, okay, so there's a lot of, like, okay, I take on a lot of roles in our life.
Yeah.
I have in the past. We'll ignore the fact that, yes, you've been, I feel like, contributing a lot and helping with cooking and those kind of things. I feel like I do the cooking. We don't have a cleaning
That's correct. We're
person
capable of
anymore.
cleaning.
So we are cleaning.
Yeah.
Okay. So, like, the cleaning, there's the gym. Like there's some roles that I feel like I overwhelm myself with some of these roles. Like there's a lot of those things. So like it's fine. There's nothing objectively wrong with those things, or if I put it on paper. But if I kind of don't, if I just kind of keep going and like I sense that, okay, I need help, or I probably need to like ask for help or get whatever, or maybe take a break, and I don't do that, it's the cheerleader. It's just like, yep, it's going to be fine. I'll just keep going. And yep. And then all of a sudden, what the problem is, it's not fine. Things all come to a head, and then it's exhausting.
Yeah, the game ends at some point, and you realize, oh shit, we got blown out. Right. And now there's, in real life, I've done all this stuff, and there's resentment, or not feeling appreciated, or things kind of don't go the way you maybe would like or thought they would, and all the way there was signs to show you that they weren't going to.
Right. So for me, the coach in me would be looking at like when maybe trying to get to a place before things go wrong, to say like, hey, the coach in me would say like, maybe you need to
like maybe like something like, look, it's really admirable that you do put on all these hats that and don't really think twice about it, because you want to contribute, and whatever that is, one, like, how is that going? What do you because if it's just like, yeah, no, I love it, it's great, then like, okay, it's not just the fact that you're doing a million things. So checking in with how those are going, or what are the signs, what are the sensations, what are the thoughts, what are the emotions when you're playing mom, cook, wife, business owner, friend, whatever it might be. And if it's like, right, there's this one spot that, like, let's just say the cooking, because that's been kind of a recent one, where it's just like, I'm just tired of always having the cooking. So then, like, you have to, instead of just being like, but it's fine, like, I like the cooking, and I cook really healthy,
which
the
is
kids, which is the rationalization, right? It's fine. It's all good, it's fine. It's like that the cheerleader is rationalizing that and ignoring the sign, as well as denying someone else the ability to help. But you can't look only at, this isn't like how you're going to coach Bill to help cook more.
No, I understand.
But within you, it would be, and it's kind of, this is sort of what we've worked on, except just not under the guise of the Cynic cheerleader and the coach, is like recognizing that sign is like, look, I feel like I am constantly cooking, going to the store. It's overwhelming. It's tiring. I love cooking and I enjoy cooking. I really do. But it's also like getting to the point where I'm like, ugh, I just dread it and I hate it. Well, then within you, what can then you do to like actually maybe share that and then involve others? Because what's going to happen then is it's going to be, I'm going to be the adversary, not the ally. And it's going to go from cheerleader swinging over to cynic. And it's going to be like, yeah, he's over there just, whatever, reading or working or whatever, not helping, doesn't want to help, and takes me for granted. And then you see where that negative loop just goes down and down and down and down. And so the thing about the cynic and the cheerleader is kind of like a pendulum. And the coach, if you think about, whatever, I'm not going to use more metaphors. I hate when I use metaphors, but the cynic and the cheerleader can swing and flip back and forth, creating this just vicious downward spiral.
Right.
Where the coach is like then the person that has to come in and be like, look, okay, one, either we're spiraling, like if you know you're spiraling, and look to check in within yourself, because this is applied to yourself.
Right.
If you can try to become your own coach, there's never going to be any replacement for an external coach, an objective coach, a good coach. But within you, if you can apply that coach's hat and play the role of the coach, understanding the job of the coach is not just to solve the problem, but to
the old Amazon delivery.
But to empower his or her people. Oh my God. Okay.
Just pause it.
Riley, quit.
To empower her.
So to empower his or her people,
right.
given the reality of the situation, you know, yeah. and being okay with that as well, knowing that, look, and this is something that we've kind of done, is that Riley, hey, come here. Come here.
Riley, come.
That's not going anywhere anytime soon.
Come on. It's okay. It's okay.
Come here. It's all right, girl.
Come on.
Come here.
Good girl. You lay
Okay.
down. You lay down. Good girl.
You shut the door.
Mm-hmm. I don't know why people need to pull all the way into the driveway to drop off a box on our stuff.
What even was it?
I don't know.
Anyway, so the coach knows too that practices are super important. Mm-hmm. And so for our own life, if we can look at that and be like, with the cooking example.
Practicing asking for help.
Yeah, practicing asking for help. Practicing perhaps saying like, I'm going to be the coach of my own thing and involve you, but also then, you know, when there are others in play, like.
So what happens when I'm a coach and you're or I'm a cheerleader and you're a cynic?
What? I don't know, the universe as a whole tearing it?
No, but I mean for people to understand the interaction is like, if we can all move towards, with a lot of this stuff, it is the awareness, being able to be aware of how you're being. Some of that is like, for sure, like when people are going to say, well, how do you start doing that?
I guess some of the stuff is like, there's and I don't like to be, you know, obviously dogmatic or absolute, but this world does not need more cynics. Mm-hmm. I think we can agree to that. And I will say this area is super cynical. Mm-hmm. And
yeah, but there's also a lot of cheerleaders.
Well, sure. And that's another side.
Yeah.
There are youths. There's a youth suicide problem. And yet all we're fucking doing is putting more pressure on kids to get in college.
Right.
Before they're in 7th grade. The sports schedules are insane. Look, your kid's not going to get
But where do you see that falling?
What do you mean?
What category? What? I mean, I see that more as the cheerleader.
Yeah, I agree.
Everything's fine. Everybody's fine.
Yeah,
there was no problem.
Yeah.
The kids are fine. They can handle it. And
yeah, and it's
everybody has their head in the sand.
Yeah, and what's really uncomfortable about that is you don't know, obviously, someone else's like story or situation or what's going on. But if you were to think about ignoring the signals, not dealing with the small little things with compassion and as a coach, where you also understand that, look, it's not going to guarantee success. You can be a great coach, and it doesn't mean you're going to never lose. But it's also that pursuit of the improvement and the practice and the figuring out, be like, all right, we're getting better, and celebrating the process within yourself too, of whatever it is you're kind of working on, or within your family unit or whatever that might be. And so, on the one hand, the cynic of, look, politics right now are a great example. The entire country is cynical. If you're not pretty much like vehemently on one side or the other. If you're whatever, you're just kind of, I'm not gonna say you're the cheerleader, you're gonna just be an echo. No, maybe maybe this is judgment, maybe I'm off base, but like, it's a circus, and can we really trust what people are saying? Right. I don't know. Like, for me, I'm a cynic when it comes to politics and politicians, 100%. Now, letting go of that, man, I don't know, is that just giving in or giving up?
Sure.
I don't know. Try to form my own opinions, try to research, try to read. Let go of, trying to also like let go of how that just seeps into everything else. And then, of course, you know, with other things like pressures on kids these days and whatnot. Yeah, like the fact that 6th, 7th, 8th graders, high schoolers are being dosed with medication because they're riddled with anxiety, because they feel this unrelievable pressure.
Well, right, and the medication is its own cheerleader.
That's its own.
Like,
and that's its own thing.
Here, just numb everything.
But like, what the fuck is going on? Is really like what the cheerleader needs to actually ask sometimes.
Yeah.
And if it's just like, no, but things are good, you know, and like we hear it all the time. But
we can see that even, not to get down this thing, but even what's funny about the coach role, we've seen plenty of coaches in kids sports who aren't.
They're not coaching. Listen,
so it doesn't matter.
The coach is a human. Mm-hmm. It is not a position.
Yeah.
Just like a leader. You can be in a leadership position and not be a leader.
Right. But that's, I think, to the point of some of the questions that have come up, or things that have come up with kids or parenting, or it is definitely harder to be the coach sometimes.
Yeah, of course, because on
it's
one
more
hand,
involved, and you gotta stop and
and you gotta light that ass up sometimes and be like, look, that is like unacceptable.
Right.
I think the challenge is obviously going to be, you know, you're not attacking the human being. Mm-hmm. Saying you're a terrible person, but it's that way that you operated is not in line with whatever. And so, you know, the coach does have to stand firm and be honest. And the coach also has to have compassion and celebrate things. If you're just a hard ass, you're not going to get out of people their best.
Right.
People are at some point going to turn off, and different people are going to have different thresholds. You know, and within that, as a coach, and I haven't even really gone into this, but like, there are multiple hats you have to wear as a coach. Mm-hmm. And guess what? You have to address your coaching philosophy and mindset based upon the person you're coaching. So if it is yourself as well, you have to recognize that in different situations, yes, you're going to be like a different person.
Right. You're
not going to operate the same in every single situation. But that's kind of a big thing with the practice. Is one of the weeks is developing an internal standard. And when we think about a standard, we often think about it's measurable, it's observable, it's like based on how did it go, and like, hey, you met or you didn't meet the standard. Yes, of course, there's utility and value to that, but with an internal standard, those values and attributes that you do want to express, those can be constant, but the actual way in which those come out is going to depend based on the dynamic environment, based upon what's either challenging you. Like sometimes some folks, like the ability to celebrate something you did well is really fucking hard for some people. But my God, can they find what they did wrong?
Yeah.
Easily. And they're very good at it. Okay. So we can see now how that kind of can present itself. And so, yeah, I mean, that's kind of...
Yeah, I think it's helpful just giving the framework. Like I said, one of the things that's been really valuable is just seeing these things as concepts you can like just take a look at it. Okay, what's happening, and okay, if I look at this through that lens, like that's just to step back a little bit, like you said, and get some objectivity. So I think
and it's not and like I said, it's not a blanket thing. Mm-hmm. You're not. I mean, maybe you are.
Right, but like in this situation, how am I being? Oh, I'm being the cheerleader. I'm choosing to put my head in the sand. Oh, in this situation, I'm really being super cynical. So, and then just having the coach come online as even just the fact that you're even asking that or recognizing it, the coach has come online because it is now saying like, how can we look at this? And I think that's
and really for both of them, there's always going to be what's another way we can look at this?
Right.
Right. That's the curiosity that you're speaking about. And continuing to ask, like, how does it feel to be the cynic?
Right. And that's where
how
it
does
gets
it feel
into the feeling. Like,
to be that? Yeah.
What are you feeling? Are you feeling nothing? Can that kind of help guide you? And yeah.
And so,
I think
you know, and I think there was just only one other thing that I was thinking about that I don't know if, but like when it comes to practice and cooking, let's just say, like it might be for me. So you're like an expert cook, chef. I'm not. If you're being a coach with yourself, because the cooking is something that's important to you. Now I'm just kind of like whatever. I'm out there. Within yourself, with the cooking, like, do you have the ability to recognize, okay, this type of practice right now is so elementary to where I'm at, but the bigger picture is to...
Right, you mean like me asking you to cook. It's not going to be the same food I'm cooking.
You asking me to cook is not about me cooking.
Yeah, I was trying to get to that. So like me asking you to cook, because the challenge is now you have to go to the store. There's a whole, like, you kind of have to step back before you can step forward a little bit.
Exactly.
Because what ends up happening is, like, it's just easier for me to do it.
Right.
I already know what's at the store. I don't have to go through I don't have a million questions. I know how to do the cooking. But that short term, like, it's fine, it'll be fine. The bigger picture is it's not going to be fine. Which do I want the outcome to be? Me being resentful of you? Or like it taking a little bit longer so that you get an idea of like, okay, now I have these few things I know how to cook. I know what the ingredients are. You know, sure, one might take a little bit longer, but the outcome's going to be much more positive.
Right, because if it was about, yeah, for sure. And I think that's where it's
not being an immediate thing.
No, not being an immediate thing, and also being able to be like, all right, like, for example, last night, like, we cooked it together. You know, and having within yourself, too, the ability, and that's where presence and frankly, appreciation are just so incredible. Because it's like you're involved in the exact solution that you're trying to help and improve within yourself. And it's not about me necessarily, but about you being like, can you then in that moment be like, all right, this is great. Like I recognize something within myself that was giving me, that was not serving me, that was taking away from whatever that was I wanted to improve upon. I had the awareness to say, this is the thing, and the courage to action it. And involving others is always going to be a very powerful way. Right. And did that. And now we're in this situation. This is the present thing where like I'm asking you about cutting up herbs and stuff or whatever it might be. And like that's the solution. The end product might not be presented right now. Like I'm not cooking 4 nights a week. Right. But you're in the actual solution. Can you see it? Right. The process is the solution. But can you see it? And the coach, like that's where the coach can be like, can watch the players, and the players in this case is obviously you, like train and get better in that real time. They see that. They see the way that they carry themselves. They see that the way they think, how they move, how they don't move, all of that. Like that's the solution. The solution is what you're involved in. Because otherwise I could just order pizza and you're not cooking anymore. Right. It's like, hey, look.
Right, it's not.
I took care of dinner. It's like, but it's fucking not about you taking care of dinner. Yeah. And so, yeah, that's kind of that. So that about wraps it up, I think.
All right.
So.
Good.
Yeah. The Cynic, cheerleader, and the coach.
We'll be back.
What do we have going on? Not much. Well, we have a lot, but nothing like...
One of these episodes, we're getting closer.
Yeah, we're getting close. All right, then. That's about it. Yeah. If you have any questions, not this episode, but maybe next one, we'll save for some questions at the end. So if you have them, shoot them over. We'll collect them. And otherwise, that's it. So hope you enjoyed. Let us know what you think.